paper in here. Yes. Starting out with the Daily Independent. Yeah. It says, lawyers criticize DSS rearrest of Emefiele despite court order. That's what Daily Independent is leading with. And they say, stay action frustrating highest dent on Tinubu's government. The story continues on page 29. But see, the other writer asked court to penalize DSS, demand obedience to court orders, warn against supplanting the rule of law, reject arbitrariness. Who's saying all of this? Go to page 29 and find out exactly who's saying this. Above the nameplate, Senate urges FG to halt proposed electricity tariff hike. I think they're just doing that. The House of Representatives had made that resolution sometime last week. IMF keeps Nigeria's economic growth forecast at 3.2%. Many will ask the question, what does that portend for the Nigerian citizens? But I guess we'll have a bit of that when we get into our conversations today. We are not unifying foreign exchange rates, CBN. And see the writer says it is gradually withdrawing old Naira notes, raises MPR to 18.75.
Well, if it is indeed withdrawing, then it has to be a little more aggressive with this withdrawal.
Because it's quite slow, if you ask.
It's quite slow. I mean, people can barely find this new Naira note.
Mark, but it's not even that. If you do get the new notes, I mean the old notes, the stench, I'm sorry, but no, it's not funny to handle. And below that, this other one, embattled Adamu Omisore amid Tinubu amid APC leadership crisis. Well, that's it from Daily Independent.
Well, Daily Trust has this story, which, of course, we all saw yesterday, the sordid drama in front of the courts. Emefiele rearrested over terrorism. They have that in parentheses there. Over terrorism, CSOs, lawyers, slam DSS. Secret police, prison officers fight over custody. I mean, take a look at what happened yesterday. It was so sad to see. I know that our guests will certainly have more than a mouthful on that particular matter, but look at this. It's a sad day, clash, unfortunate. Ex-CBN governor granted 20 million Naira bail. The story is right there on page 4 of the paper for you. You know that the legal correspondents have been, keeping tabs on the court, watching very carefully, knowing that anytime soon, the suspended CBN governor was going to be arraigned in front before a judge, and the judge did grant bail. I mean, we heard the terms upon which she granted the bail, and the fact that she actually asked, that the Mr. Emefiele be kept, with the correctional facility, pending when he was able to perfect the terms of his bail conditions. And that was what the prison officials, it would seem, were trying to protect yesterday. But hey, this is a drama. Page 4 is where you find details. 48 hours to deadline. Tinubu yet to send ministerial list to Senate. I don't want to say so much for hitting the ground running, but hey, this is what it is. This is what it is. This is what it is. List will reach us within 2 days. That's according to Senate leader. Will be deadline. That's according to the presidency. You'll find the story on page 10. No comment on that. You have a number of other stories just right beneath the nameplate. Petrol price hike. No plan to reduce work days. That's according to the federal government. Well, they had better come up with a plan because transportation has gone up significantly. And workers will be wondering, how exactly do you expect us to come to work? Big question for them. Or we'll leave it there for Daily Trust newspapers.
And turn to The Guardian. Quite a lot to think about there from the Daily Trust, but just as much to think about from the front page of The Guardian this morning as we look at, the big story. And, it's quite telling when you consider the transient nature of power. Just on the front page there, you see the suspended CBN governor headed to the courtroom for trial. And above that, you see the CBN moving ahead with things. CBN on new routes to inflation control, raises interest rate on banks' deposit. It's a page 6 read, and you see just beside the picture of the CBN governor, another of officials of the Nigerian Correctional Service and the DSS, seemingly unpatriotic conduct there. But of course, we'll have a lot to talk about ahead of the program this morning. And you see DSS clashes with NCOs, that's Nigerian Correctional Service, rearrests Emefiele despite bail. All of the details you find on page 4 of The Guardian. And at the bottom strip, you see this one also. Senate defers ministerial list till Thursday, urges discos to allow Nigerians breathe. Is it just discos? Where are the palliatives? Nigerians are asking. Well, some would rather have us call it intervention. Be it intervention or palliatives. Looks like they're long in coming and Nigerians are looking for space to breathe. Well, I won't exit The Guardian without telling you about this one, just above the ministerial list story. 15,000 IVF babies delivered in 130 Nigerian clinics since 1989. That's interesting. Besides it being, the number being very low, there are quite a number of other issues, around IVF deliveries in Nigeria. The stigma, the infertility, high infertility rate, and quite a number of other issues. Kudos to Nigerian women who have to go through all of that just to, reproduce. Let's leave it there for The Guardian newspaper.
This Nigerian newspaper has this one on its front page, still talking about the same issue. DSS prison officials flex muscles over rearrest of Emefiele. I'm a little concerned about the term. Is it rearrest? Rearrest sounds like it's another issue altogether, as perhaps also indicated on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. But hey, the details you'll find on the inside pages, page 4 to be precise. Embattled CBN governor granted 20 million naira bail, forcefully taken away by secret police. Nigerians expressed displeasure over interagency rivalry. Find the details on the inside pages. 48 days to go. Tinubu's ministerial nominees list ready, says Senate leader. Well, where is it? Well, I can hear someone asking that question. Drama in Senate over Shomale's 9th Assembly looting coming. To find the details of that on the inside pages, page 5 to be precise. And Senate to FG, don't increase Nigerians' hardship. Stop planned electricity tariff hike. It's like between the devil and the deep blue sea because, hey, on the one hand, it's private sector driven, so market forces and all. On the other hand, we have to consider Nigerians. Very interesting. Well, so many other papers to look at, but there is a rather pressing issue we need to look at, so stick with us in a moment. We'll be right back. That's the much of the papers we can take this morning.
I encourage you to take advantage of this meeting to bear your minds on the issues at stake and suggest realistic solutions to them. We must approach these issues with an open mind and guided by the fact that revenues available to the government may not fully meet our demands. Therefore, we must find a middle ground that satisfies everyone without prejudice to the 2023 Memorandum of Understanding. We particularly note that your demands include the payment of 2023 Medical Residency Training Fund, upward review of consolidated medical salary structure, CONMES, and salary arrears dating back to 2015. These issues and more can be resolved without embarking on an judicial action. In this regard, therefore, we urge you as leaders to appeal to your members to suspend any action while we interface with the executive arm of government. We equally seek your understanding on the fact that a new administration just came on board.
Thank you for staying with us. Dr. Innocent Orji joins us this morning. He is National President, Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors. He's also Senior Registrar, Orthopedic and Trauma Surgery. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Well, following, up with that conversation that your association already had with the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and then this declaration, even before any response from the Speaker or from the House of Representatives about their meeting or none with the President. There are those who wonder, maybe you've received some communication from the Speaker or from the Presidency that you thought wasn't sounding like what you wanted to hear, so you want to call out a strike first? Or?
Well, thank you for having me. It's unfortunate that we have come to this point again. You will recall that we have been on these same issues for so long. From January this year, we have been talking about some of them who we believe are actually urgent matters. And ever since then, we have had several engagements with so many government officials. It has been promises upon promises. Sometime in April, this year, we had cause to issue an ultimatum on these same issues, and then had to even embark on a warning strike in May. During that strike, we were called, and a memorandum of understanding was signed between us and the government side. Many of the issues that led us to that warning strike, they put timelines to them. But unfortunately, all the timelines has passed, and we kept reminding the government side, and nothing happened. So our members just feel that, look, they are tired of these promises. We actually appreciate the Honorable Speaker for intervening. We also appreciate the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, who also called us last week, and we had a discussion. They say we should give them a day or two, which we did, and nothing has happened. And I want to say that some of the problems we have highlighted can be resolved in a day or two. And so when an association makes demands of government, if you have it, and government is able to resolve two, of course, it gives you hope that they have started attending to your problems, and then there won't be any need to embark on strike. But all the demands we've been making, nothing has been addressed. Okay. Nothing at all.
Okay, well, that's cheering, but just one moment, Bukola. So you notice that, in speaking about the interventions so far, you've spoken about the head of the House of Representatives, is the deputy chairman of the National Assembly itself. And you've also spoken to a former Speaker of the House who occupied the same space, who is now Chief of Staff to the President. Is there anyone you're speaking with in the Ministry of Health, seeing that there is no minister in place?
See, I want to draw the attention of Nigerians to the requests we've been making. Let me give you an example. One of the most important requests that we've made is for the government to release the circular on one-for-one replacement, because our hospitals are depleted. We have been singing this like a song since last year. Government on its own, I'm coming to your question. Government on its own set up a ministerial committee that came up with a guideline on how to quickly replace those who have left the system.
This was when?
February this year. But up till now, it is yet to be
but a minister was
secularized.
A minister was in place at the time.
It had left the Ministry of Health. It is now on the table of the Office of the Head of Civil Service of the Federation. Okay. That circular is yet to be. In fact, in the MOU we signed in May, I have it here, I can show you. They said that on or before 5th June, that circular will be released. And our members are dying because they are overworked. They are breaking that. We lost a doctor last week. It has now become a weekly affair that you wake up every week, you hear that a doctor has died. It's because of stress. And our members just feel that, look, we cannot continue to operate like this. There is nothing, and this issue will not need any money, any financial involvement. What the guideline simply says is that get a list of those doctors who have left the hospitals and replace them.
But Mr. Oji, don't you think there's a limitation on government in that regard? Because where are the people to recruit? A lot of doctors have left, and they're leaving daily. Have
they released the circular? Let them release the circular, and then when I get to the point of say, okay, we have advertised, and there is nobody to be recruited. Let them do. We are aware that doctors, so yes, I agree with you, that so many doctors have left. But we still have those who are outside the system who want to come in. And the fact that you're not even bringing them in is making some of them to also leave. So it is worsening the brain drain we are talking about. So many of these issues can be resolved. Incidentally, even the memorandum of understanding we signed 2 months ago, if you look at those that signed it, they are all permanent secretaries, and they are still in this.
Okay. And closely related to that, sorry, Ayo, is your request that they should stop the downgrading of the MDCN. Don't you also think that that is to check the brain drain? You know, government is helpless as it is now with the mass exodus of medical practitioners, not just doctors, but also nurses from the country.
It will be unfortunate if that is the reason, because what it simply means is that you are reducing by certificate the level of training we are getting because you want to check brain drain. That will be very unfortunate. But incidentally, we have been talking about this since last year, and nobody has come out to tell us the reason. I mean, you see, what pains people is that you make demands, you write, in fact, we've even written severally, at least to have a discussion with the MDCL. Let them tell us why this has happened, because it's possible they will even give us the reason and we will understand.
Okay.
But what we are hearing is silent. We are not hearing anything at all.
All right. Our colleagues in Abuja would also like to join in on this conversation. Go ahead, guys.
You know, Dr. Oji, one of the questions that's been bugging me, and I'm sure a lot of other Nigerians, is the fact that, yes, you had this agreement with the federal government and you've had negotiations, you've pursued it over and over again. But the times have changed. And so Nigerians will want to know why you want to add extra pressure to their lives, so to speak, by demanding that government sorts out the agreement you had with them. I'm not making light of that agreement, but let's look at the situation on ground. Is there no way the doctors, the resident doctors, can also consider the situation on ground? Say, okay, government, we know this is the situation, this is what we're willing to do. Have you considered that?
The situation on ground is actually part of what is making us to take this route, because I did tell you that we don't have doctors and nurses in our hospitals, and nobody has been able to disprove that. In fact, even Nigerians who visit these hospitals, they know they are witnessing the increasing waiting time. They come to the accident and emergency department with trauma cases, and you have just one doctor, so they are already dying. And we have been on this for several months. These things can be resolved. People are already dying. Our members are dying. Nigerians are dying too. People are breaking down. So do we rather continue to just let them die, or do we intervene at this point? You see, these things can be resolved. Let the government address the demands we've made, and we will come back. Honestly, nobody wants to go on strike. Let them work hard to resolve these issues, and there won't be any need for any strike action.
When you say resolve these issues, I'm trying to look at them. So you say immediate payment of the 2023 MRTF, immediate release of the circular on one-for-one replacement, payment of skipping arrears, upward review of CONMES in line with full salary restoration to the 2014 value of CONMES. These are your demands. Payment of the arrears of consequential adjustment of minimum to the omitted doctors, reversal of the downgrading of the membership certificate by MDCN, payment of MRTF new hazard allowance, skipping and implementation of corrected CONMES in state tertiary health institutions, payment of omitted hazard allowance, arrears. Dr. Oji, nobody, I'm not sure anybody in his right senses or her right senses will want to look down on any of these demands that you have put out here. But I asked a question earlier, and I'll say we'll go back there again. All these payments you're asking, is there nothing that your organization can do?
Well, I don't know what you mean by is there nothing we can do. Like, we can actually decide to take those demands one after the other. If you take...
Let me put it this way. So, which of these demands, I read out at least 8 of them here, which of them would NARD consider as, okay, if this is taken care of, will be willing to come back and then begin to discuss how the others can be taken care of. I do understand that sometimes government has agreement and they do not keep their own side of the agreement. And so the next thing is the affected body or association takes on the hard road, which is going on strike. But the effect also, which I know that you guys are not happy about, the effect on the Nigerian citizens that need medical attention is there as well. So which of these demands would you say, okay, look, government, if you guys will do this or are willing to sit down and do this, then we'll be willing to come back?
Well, I believe that what happens when an association raises an alarm or makes demands of government is for government to sit down with them and address, if you have 8 demands online like you just listed, and government ends up addressing 1 or 2, and then appeals to you to give them more time and then put timelines on others, of course, discussion can go that way, and there's no way, if that has happened, there is no way we would have come to this point. But I just told you that all the demands you just listed, none has been met, and we have been on this since last year. In fact, for some of them, we have been on them since 2014. Okay, so I have mentioned one of them. Recruit doctors and nurses to replace those who have left the system. Our system is depleted. Our doctors are dying. They are breaking down. They are having burnout effect of the brain drain. It's a very urgent demand. And our members are saying we cannot continue to wait any longer, and every week we'll be having deaths being reported across the country. The 2023 Medical Residency Training Fund that you talked about is captured in the 2023 budget. It is there. So our members are wondering why it has not been released up till now. And these monies have been spent. Actually, our members borrowed money to go for the training, to go for the exams, and they want to pay back. Okay, even the state tertiary health institutions, many of them are not doing well. In fact, some of the state governors have completely abandoned healthcare services in their states. You know, we can mention the states. They are not paying. We don't have up to 10 states in this country paying the medical residency training fund. Some of them are not paying the salaries. Some of them, even the salary structure they are using, we do not even know how they came about it. It is obviously lower than what is being paid at the federal level. So you have both internal and external brain drain. People move from those states to the federal. Some of them move from the states to outside the country. So we want both the federal and the state governments to work around the clock to address this demand, because incidentally, these are the things that will reduce the brain drain, the massive brain drain that we have in our health sector.
So who are those that you want right now to address this particular matter? I mean, because we've seen you have mentioned a number of people that, had invited you to say, look, this is on the front burner for us. We saw the Speaker of the House of Representatives talk about some of your demands and how they believe that there'll be more money available right now to be able to address this. And they also made you a few promises. You also told us about the intervention of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. Who precisely in government right now do you want to be saddled with the responsibility, saying that ministers are yet to be appointed?
I've said it before, we don't need a minister for the circular on one-for-one replacement to be released. And even the Medical Residency Training Fund, it was captured in the budget. There's no reason why it shouldn't be released at this point. Okay, and the other demand that we've made, if they sit down with us and put timelines we know that they will soon appoint ministers. If they sit down, if they're able to address these 2 issues I mentioned, and then even the issue of the upward review of the consolidated medical salary structure, there's no reason why that matter should not have been concluded by now, in line with the demands we've made of government. And so if they're able to address those ones and they sit down with us and put timelines on the other issues remaining, then we can take it to our members, and we are sure that they will listen to us and suspend the strike.
Okay, so right now, is it that all the ultimatums that you've given, they've expired, and as such, you're not exactly willing to, give any further space? Because it was just this week that the Speaker of the House of Representatives had that engagement with you.
You see, this thing is about time. It's about the speed with which the government side is responding. You remember that 2 weeks ago, this matter was tabled during the plenary session of the House of Representatives. And 2 weeks after, nothing tangible has come out from it. You see, we are representing people, and people, they are suffering. So they believe that there is a limit to, there should be a limit to how long they can wait. Let government, many of these demands, in fact, you don't even need any formal meeting for addressed. So we are still appealing. This strike is just on day one. I have said that some of these issues can be addressed in a day or two, and nobody has been able to say it is not possible. Let them address them, and our members, we believe, will come back, to their duty post.
Dr. Oji, you mentioned a number of states the other time that some states are doing something, some states are not doing some things. Which states are you, saying, okay, they're making some moves, and
some
which
progress.
ones are not making any moves?
Well, we know that the Benue State University Teaching Hospital, they have paid them the medical residency training fund for 2023. In fact, they have paid before the federal government. We are aware that we just said that Ogun State is making effort to pay, at least for the year. But we are also aware that the Kwara State governor, who is also the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, he met us last week, and he promised to pay his people by this week. And so apart from these three states, we are not aware that there is any state again that has paid for 2023. In the past, Enugu State government paid, Delta State paid, Nasarawa paid, but for this year, it's only these three states, if I remember correctly, it's only these three states that has paid or making moves to pay.
And I, in fact, heard the state governor saying yesterday that they're also approving the implementation of payment of medical allowances to medical workers. So these states that you have mentioned, is it the demonstration of commitment towards some of your demands? Is it significant to say that perhaps the strike may not be total in these states, or the medical workers in these states may not join the strike, just to also show that they appreciate the commitment of the state governors?
Well, those are the internal decisions that we will take as the National Executive Council. But as of today, we have declared total indefinite strike, and all our member centers are expected to join.
Including in these three states?
I said again that these are internal discussions because we have a way of addressing those issues.
Yeah,
I understand where you are driving at.
Yes, I mean, those states have started, some have paid, some are making moves that So how does this strike that you're making indefinite and total, how does it help that cause?
Incidentally, I hope you know that medical residency training fund is not the only demand that we are making. Many of these states have not even paid hazard allowance, which was paid from last year. Okay, so like I said, these are internal decisions that we will take as a body, and it's not for public consumption.
Okay.
We appreciate those state governors that have tried to address this issue, and we promise them that we will take it into consideration in the decisions that will be taken.
Yeah, it also sounds like, from what you said now, that it's not just at the federal level that this intervention is required. It's also at the state level. Which of these demands, 8 of which my colleague read out to you the other time, which of them are state-specific and which ones are federal?
Most of the states are not paying the medical residency training fund. Most of them have not paid the hazard allowance. Most of them have not paid skipping arrears. Most of them have not also adopted the revised consolidated medical salary structure for their doctors. So all these things have to do with the states. some of them are also, also have to do with the federal government. I have listed the issue of the circular on one-for-one replacement, the 2023 Medical Residency Training Fund, the upward review of the consolidated medical salary structure, which incidentally government started negotiations since last year, and it has become endless. We have also talked about the hazard allowance that was paid last year. So many of our members were omitted, and we have submitted the list. Even the Ministry of Health has also submitted the list, for this payment to be made. And when you have this kind of payment and some people are omitted, it causes agitation, So we are also talking about the downgrading of the membership certificate of the West African College of Surgeons and Physicians. These things have to do with the federal government. Even this one doesn't have to, doesn't require any financial commitment for it to be addressed.
Speaking of which, after your ordinary meeting some months back, you rejected the, is it 30 to 25% offer of government for the consolidated medical salary increase. Isn't that, significant? Because government has made an offer, has made a certain commitment, and perhaps government is saying that under the circumstances, the economic realities we're faced with, this is what we can offer.
Is it our members that will bear that economic reality? Because the truth is that what we are asking for is full salary restoration. What that means is that the salary structure we are using now was approved in 2009 and implemented in 2014. We know what the inflation rate was as at then, the exchange rate, the fuel price even, compared to 2023. So we have applied all those figures and gotten a certain percentage. And some Nigerians are saying it is too much. How did we come about it? We have placed the data on the table. Let the government side apply the figure, because what we are saying is that increase this salary to take us back to our economic status in 2014. So essentially, it is not even an increment. With the removal of the fuel subsidy, the figure we are getting is over 500%. And up till now, government has not done their own calculation.
So of the 200% that you're demanding, what's the minimum that you can accept if negotiations were to resume?
When negotiations start, because you see, it is difficult for me to make a pronouncement. These are things that when government makes the offer, we'll take it to our National Executive Council to decide, but certainly not 25% or 35%, because the issue is that how did you come about that percentage? It is not going to... Remember that we are all trying to address brain drain in the health sector. And we have said that the most important cause of this brain drain is poor remuneration. So if government is offering something that will not increase this salary to the extent that it will take us back to where we are in terms of our purchasing ability when the salary was approved, you will not address brain drain. People will continue to live. And I believe that this government wants to address brain drain. And if that is so, they should work with us to increase this salary to a significant level that we can use it to keep our doctors and nurses. Because it's not just about doctors. All the clinical staff in the hospital, they're asking about dissenting. It's not only doctors that are leaving.
Well, how do you respond to those who say, give these governments a bit of chance, give them some time to adjust? I mean, the ministers, the cabinet is not even formed yet. How do you respond to those who say that, especially at the federal level? In the same vein, how do you engage with the state governments? And there are those who would also say a good number of them are just getting into office. Why not give them a little bit of time to adjust?
Yeah, we are willing to give them time. Our members are willing to give time. But they at least have to address the urgent demands that we have on the table, which I have said. And I'm sure they have the capacity to do that. I'm sure they can do this thing within this week if they want to resolve this problem. Once they do it, we appeal to our members, and I'm sure they will listen to us. We will come back to work while we give them time to address the other demands.
But don't forget that some of these things have to do with money, and consequently, any government will be very, very wary wary of making commitments it cannot sustain. Yes, I mean, you said it's almost 20 years since 2009 that these things have been on. But at the same time, one would have to consider that, look, these are economic issues. I mean, it's not just recruit the doctors and then let them just languish. You want to consider that when you recruit these doctors into office, you want to make sure that they have the right facilities to work with. You want to make sure that they get the correct remuneration, including their pensions and all those things. And given the question Bukola asked you the other time about economic realities, don't you think it needs much deeper thinking?
2023 Medical Residency Training Fund was captured in the budget. There's no reason why it should not be paid by now. The issue of one-for-one replacement, like I said, does not cost the government anything extra, because what it simply means, like as I'm seated here, I know the doctors that have left my hospital. It's just for the chief medical directors to use the policy to replace them, to fill in the gaps. So what extra cost will it cost? Are they saying that even when those people have left, that they are still spending the money to pay their salaries to who now? So it's simply a measure to replace those that have left. It won't cost them extra payment. Now, the downgrading of the membership certificate we talked about is not an economic issue. It won't take the government extra. You see, what we believe that what government should do when you have this kind of issue is to quickly identify the demands that will not even cost you much, that are urgent, and address them. It's only if they do that and we refuse to come back, then of course it will be said that maybe we are not willing to listen. But they have not even addressed those ones. And so it is difficult to talk to our members not to go on strike. We have tried everything we can to avoid this strike, to the extent that we issued another ultimatum. It expired on Tuesday last week. People were calling us from everywhere, from all over the country, that we should proceed on this strike on Wednesday. The national officer just managed to control the situation, extending it to Friday. We had our meeting. It was, people were so angry. We couldn't end that meeting on Friday because of the anger and because of the stress that people have gone through. We had to go on a recess, still giving more time to see whether the urgent demands can be addressed.
And following the intervention by the Speaker of the House of Representatives, have any government officials made overtures to you, in form of appeal, that you at least wait until the cabinet is constituted?
Well, I want to repeat that some of these demands, you do not need to constitute the cabinet for them to be addressed. We are aware that there is a proposed meeting still in the House of Rep by tomorrow to still discuss these issues. But in having that meeting, we'll keep saying that the urgent demands that we've made, our members are saying that they should be addressed before we continue other discussion. We are available. We are going to attend all the meetings, even though we know that some of them, like the ones we've attended in the past, not the recent past, you go there and even from the beginning of the meeting, it is obvious to you that this meeting is not going to achieve anything. Because when you call a meeting, you do not bring the relevant government agencies that we have to speak on the specific demands on the table. How do you hope to address the issue? When you get to those demands, they will simply tell you that the particular government agency that should address it has not been invited. So how do you make progress?
So how do you respond to those who say, you are a member of the NMA, your association is it's an affiliate member of the NMA. What's the NMA saying in all of these?
Well, I think NMA is in a better position to address that question. But I know that the NMA is apparently, they are fully aware what we are doing. We have carried them along all the way.
And I recall, that reminds me also, Ayo, that under the last administration, that was a bone of contention with the former Minister of Labor, who, projected that you're not the ideal body to initiate this negotiation. When government now begins to, address your demands, I hope it would not resurface, with a form of rivalry between you and the enemy.
There can never be rivalry between a father and his son. There shouldn't be. There is no rivalry in NMA, between NMA and NARD. There has never been. Because even that situation you referred to, you didn't bring LMA to discuss with them to tell you their opinion. And so I want to maintain that LMA is our father. They are fully aware of what we are doing, and they have not said that they are not with us.
They are aware, but they are not involved right now.
What do you mean by being involved?
Involved with your negotiation right now?
No, they are. So many of the meetings we have attended, they were there.
Okay. Perhaps, the remuneration and, all of those things for your members, is one. But perhaps you can help Nigerians understand the real practical hands-on situation or experience that your members go through. What's the average day of a Nigerian doctor like? Maybe you want to give your own example as an orthopedic and trauma surgeon. I assume that that's what you are.
Yeah, you're right. You see, as a doctor, you walk around the clock. And I'm sure people already know that there is no breathing space for you. You are expected to attend to your patients all the time, whether you are in the hospital or not. And that is why most of the time as a doctor, you always try to make yourself to be reachable. You go to work every day. You take your course. You see emergency cases. Okay, so it is more of working 24 hours, and it has been complicated by the fact that we don't have enough hands already in the hospital. Some departments are shutting down. I can tell you there are some first-class tertiary hospitals, federal tertiary hospitals in this country that even as at 2 months ago, they advertised for 500 doctors. The people that applied were less than 200. And so what we are talking about is an emergency. And that's why our members feel that they don't understand why government is not moving as fast as they should on this matter. Would they rather wait until everybody leaves?
Interesting that you cited this example, because this is about the same question Bukola asked you the other time, that do we even have enough doctors in Nigeria to respond to any employment or recruitment? But you just corroborated it one way or the other now.
And so that's why they have to move fast. Even with this demand of salary, so many of our people outside the country, in fact, they have even told me a particular, just slightly lower percentage from what we're asking, that even if government gives that they will come back.
Okay.
And so we believe that government should work on it, because this is an emergency. And we want to appeal to Nigerians, because this struggle is for them. We want them to be able to see their doctors and their nurses when they get to the hospitals.
Okay. Dr. Innocent Oji, National President, Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors and Senior Registrar, Orthopedic and Trauma Surgery. Thank you so much for your time today, and we hope this is resolved very, very soon.
Amen.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're back in a moment to take on another issue. Do stay with us.
It's the first time the suspended CBN governor will be seen in public after his arrest on June 10. He was brought to the Federal High Court, Lagos, by the Department of State Services, DSS, at about 9:20 a.m. for his arraignment on a 2-count charge of illegal possession of a firearm and ammunition, and promptly led into the courtroom of Justice Nicholas Owebo. The 2-count charge was read to him, and he pleaded not guilty. Then followed arguments by his lead counsel, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Joseph Daudu, and the prosecution counsel, Nkiru Jones-Nebo, a Deputy Director of Prosecution of the Federation, on the vexed issue of whether Mr. Emefiele's bail application could be argued. The prosecution insisted that he had not been served with a copy of the bail application, but was swiftly confronted with a proof of service endorsed by the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation. In his ruling, Justice Owebo held that there was indeed evidence of service. He rejected the objections of the federal government and proceeded to hear the bail application. In his submissions, Joseph Daudu asked the court to admit his client to bail on self-recognizance or on other liberal terms, pending the hearing and determination of the trial. But the prosecution counsel opposed the request for bail. In an oral submission, the prosecutor argued that the suspended governor of the CBN is a powerful man who could intimidate witnesses. She asked the court to note that he had refused to hand in his passport, an indication of his capacity to abscond and evade his trial. After listening to both parties, Justice Owebo declined to grant bail on self-recognizance. Instead, he granted bail in the sum of 20 million naira with one surety in like sum. The surety must own a landed property in Lagos and swear to an affidavit of means. The defendant is also to deposit his international passport with the court registrar. Pending the fulfillment of all these conditions, the judge remanded the suspended CBN governor in the custody of the Ikori Correctional Center, as against the request of the FG's counsel that he be remanded in the custody of the DSS. Shortly after the court's ruling, lawyers to the federal government took their leave, declining to comment on the day's proceedings. Operatives of the DSS strategically took positions preparatory to rearresting Mr. Emefiele. His lawyers quickly raised an alarm.
We saw an avowed intention on their part to actually take him back into their custody, despite the order of court. We then called the attention of the learned trial judge, who was magnanimous to hear us. And we told him that these were our fears. So he sent for the officer in charge of the squadron that you see milling around here, armed to the teeth. And his answer was that he's under instruction to secure his safety, and therefore he's under instruction from his boss, meaning the Director General, that he should bring him back. And we said no. The judge then told him, I am now in charge. The court is in charge. He has been brought to court and we have made orders. And he has been asked to go there. Apparently seemed adamant. And he turned and left.
Attempts by the officials of the correctional center to take custody of the suspended CBN governor was met with resistance by the DSS, and this led to a clash. Following interventions from lawyers and other quarters, the officers of the correctional center withdrew and took their leave, paving the way for the DSS to again take custody of Mr. Emefiele.
Are constrained because we do not want where there will be exchange of arms by the two organs of government. We may very, very reluctantly allow our client, force the DSS to willfully, consciously, intentionally flout the orders of the court by taking him into their custody.
At about 3 p.m., the drama came to an end, with the DSS leading the suspended CBN governor away. Trial in this court has been fixed for November the 14th. Shola Shoyeli, Channels Television News.
And that's where we're kicking it up from that drama at the courts yesterday. What's the implication? We have here in the studio Professor Paul Ananaba, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Thank you for joining us, Prof.
Thank you, my brother.
For one who's also teaching these same things to the would-be lawyers and all, and a Senior Advocate of Nigeria, what are the implications of Emefiele's rearrest against the court order?
This is a very difficult issue to comment on because one will even swear that this type of thing cannot happen. I mean, I don't know how we look to the world because I mean television and the internet makes the world a global village. So across the world, this is what is being shown as Nigeria. I mean, in legal terms, we say so a matter is in the custodial legis of the court. What it means is that it is in the bowels of the court. It is the court that is being dragged around, not Emefiele. Emefiele is just a human being. And when you see people say, well, what is the need to go to court? Well, moved from go to court to go into that court, and you are before the court. The judge intervened. The judge had not even finished his proceedings. You reject it. The judge made an order. You throw the order away because you have guns. So that is what has played out. The DSS, if they have grounds, can rearrest Emefiele. That's not the issue. But not in the face of the order of the court. Now, if the order of court had been carried out and the DSS has a reason to arrest, not even rearrest, it's the wrong language, because the first arrest is gone, terminated with the order of the court. The DSS had the right to invite him or arrest him and also bring him to court within constitutional limits. Because nobody should be allowed to operate beyond the law. And you could see that lawyers were in court, litigants were in court. What if it got to a point that the correctional service insisted, reinforced, all of them reinforced, and the shooting begins, or more fracas, because you could see an officer of NCS, you could see the singlets.
His uniform was ripped apart.
Yes, so it is sad, and I believe that the president should step into this one that we have seen now, because let's leave the Old Testament, what had been going on before. But I expect the president to step in and take decisive actions on this. And then going forward, all the agencies of government should be taken through orientation as to rule of law. This is not a military regime. And much more, any officer that will be sent to the court should have some further briefing that you don't desecrate the court. So why would people say, okay, let's go to court, or let's look at the security agency that they will do the right thing? Are you asking people to say, well, there's no hope?
Is it that the officials are unaware of the fact that, when the court gives an order, it ought to be obeyed? Because, I mean, this fracas, one would say, was only brought about because one agency of government felt that they had been told by the court that, the accused should be in your custody pending when he perfects his bail conditions. But the other, let's say, security agency felt that they could rearrest, if we can use that word, or flout the order of court. But you see the other security, or let's say the other custodial agency trying to uphold the judgment of court. So is it that, they're not aware, or they need training? Because we're listening to Mr. Dauda, SAN there. He said that, they spoke to the most senior person there, and he says he's under instructions from his own boss. So the question is the instruction of the boss to a DSS official greater than the order of court, which had just been given a few moments before? In what dilemma do you think that the officers themselves found themselves?
Well, it's happened several times before, but I'm not aware of anyone that got to this extent where the judge was still sitting. If you listen to Joseph Dawudu SN, the judge was sitting, and that they brought the matter before and the judge invited that officer. Who else will the officer listen to? Even if you had instruction, you get back to your boss. This is what the court had invited me. This is what the court has said. The decision of the court is the final on that point. Not even the president can intervene, the commander-in-chief of all the forces. That's why he's called the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The president will only comply with the law and do other things.
Like appeal if he wants.
You know, and it is more stunning. I'm shocked, seriously, because if you listen to Mr. Dawood, you will see that the issue of where Emefiele will go until he perfects the bail condition was contested. There was a contestation that it should be taken to DSS custody. And there's also a submission that it should be to the correctional service, and the judge ordered it should go to correctional service. The judge did not say, Emefiele, walk away. Now, why wouldn't that order be obeyed? I'm so worried too, because there's no Attorney General in place. And I urge the President, because even of this development, to take urgent steps to appoint an Attorney General, because that's where I would have actually addressed my comments more to, as the Chief Law Officer, to take urgent steps. Because there is no justification for... So what if the army had come, or any other agency had come and said, no, our own boss said, bring this man.
But is it...
I was just about to say that some people will say that perhaps what we witnessed yesterday was impunity.
No, impunity is a smaller language.
It is.
Impunity is smaller because it's a different scenario that the court had risen, but the court was no longer sitting, and maybe not even within the border, the perimeter of the court of the Federal Court. They intercept him or something. That's a different. This is that you came within us in the court premises. That's the first part of it. The attention of the judge is drawn to it. The judge summons the leader of the team. The leader of the team says, well, you are a court. I cannot take orders from you. I have an order from my boss, and that's what I will obey.
So what word would you use?
I find it difficult to get a word for it because it's novel. It's novel. It doesn't happen. In all the decades of practice law, no.
Yeah.
You don't hear about that. You can hear about, like I said, intercepting the witness outside the court. Well, the next thing that would have been, Mr. George, did you hear me? I will take you also along.
You know, you said something earlier, just before we bring in our Lagos colleagues in Lagos. You said something about orientation.
Yes.
I scribbled something here, operational parameters for each of the agencies of government.
Yes.
When you say that orientation, what should that orientation be?
What I'm trying to say,
who would have to
what I'm trying to say is that you have the Office of National Security Advisor, and you have other offices. There should be clearance. Okay, not long ago, it's becoming a recurring decimal, and the president must take steps, because I'm saying the president because there is no Attorney General in place now. But the president must take urgent steps, because not long ago you got the DSS and EFCC few meters away from that court, trying to having issues as to who takes 15 Awolowo away. And the president had to intervene. That's what brought that. We didn't know what would have happened again. So there must be interagency cooperation and not rivalry. Both the NCS and DSS, they have their heads who could have been reached quickly to resolve it, to say, okay, boys, come back. It's also possible that the DG of SSS did not even know of the order of court that was going on. I'm sure if he knew, he wouldn't agree that that this kind of scenario will take place.
It truly is scandalous. I mean, saying, Nigeria's security agencies, in a fisticuff within a court premises over an order of court. I mean, as you said, no one could ever have conceptualized or, internalized what we saw yesterday in the court. But I'm a little curious because it's taken a while for Mr. Emefiele himself to be presented in court about the matter itself that has brought Mr. Emefiele to court. And for a number of people, they're a little curious as to why it has taken so long for the DSS, which had taken him into custody for the longest of times, to be able to come up with something more concrete in terms of the, let's say, the matter which he's been accused of. For a number of people, they're a little surprised at the charges which the DSS presented before him. And if we're to go by what the lawyers say, they say it's some old gun, I mean, possibly a decorative piece for which he's been charged of being in possession of. Why do you think that this matter is looking very complex? Are they looking for the charges, or are they still investigating before arresting, or, beg your pardon, well, after they've arrested him, as we had accused the EFCC of doing in times past?
Again, I expect that things should change for the best. What we're talking about is difficult to talk about it because you cannot envisage that this can be happening now. The Constitution says if you are arrested, you should be charged to court within a reasonable time. And a reasonable time will not mean more than close to 6 weeks. It cannot mean that. Now, efforts have been made, application for bail has been filed, the man is brought to court. From what you saw in the court, is the court worth anything in this instance? Is the court in reckoning? And that's why you could keep the man endless. And the people carrying out these acts or the instructions are given, if the table turns against it, is the same court they are going to run to. Now look at Emefiele himself. We're only discussing this because we stand by the principles. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, while Emefiele was governor for 8 years or 9 years of Central Bank, did he ensure that the rights and proper treatment of those in CBN was carried out? Did he ensure that the court system is properly funded? Did he ensure that even the security agencies are properly funded and trained? Did he ensure that other Nigerians who were then manhandled or had their rights infracted upon, did he ever say or ensure that the government or security agencies respected their rights? Today it is his turn.
Aren't those outside the remit of what a CBN governor is supposed to do?
No, but he's a member of the Executive Council, he's a member of several things. He has influence to state certain things.
Yeah, but if he spoke and we don't know, how are we supposed to know?
Well, if he spoke, that's fine. But I'm only saying that even as governor of CBN, he wouldn't have believed that this could happen to him. So when people are in offices, they should know that it is like an oscillating fan. That office may not be permanent. Let's begin to build strong institutions, respect principles, do the right things. I'm not defending Emefiele. I won't even do. I'm saying that whoever it is, the law presumes someone who has been accused innocent or proven guilty. Let us accord every Nigerian rights, irrespective of where he's from, religion, and call off his skin.
How do you think that, because some people say this is an injury to the courts, how do you think this can be remedied?
Exactly. I had expected that the federal government would have issued a statement on this point. I expected that the heads of those institutions should have met, and I also expected that the judiciary should have responded. I'm sure that the Nigerian Bar Association will issue statements, but this is not a question of issuing statements. This is so. Why do we then go to court if a security official will come into court and tell the court, this is your order, we will not obey? It was content. The court had also right to make orders.
Should the judge step in? I mean, seeing that he was still sitting when this was happening, should the judge step in?
The judge cannot step in.
Like a
it's only thing. No, it's only if there must be some application, because he will not be a judge and an accuser and all that at the same time. But I'm aware that if a proper application is brought before the court.
I asked that question because if this was inside the courtroom,
it was inside the courtroom,
he would have had to say something.
The contempt would have been that officer there and then, who told him he was under instruction. The court would have wielded his power and shown that officer that said that the officer here is me, and you should know it. It happened many, many years back in the days of Gani Fawemi. He had given an instruction, given something not so similar to this, but one of the juniors from his chambers had gone before a judge in Ikeja and then said what his principal told him to say. And the court said, call your principal to come immediately. Principal came, and they cited him for contempt. And the Court of Appeal says, no, it is the junior that said that before you that you should have cited for contempt. Because you may not even know whether it was what the man said. So, but you could see maturity on the side of this judge. He restrained himself. He had all the powers. Just Weibo would have said, okay, I remand you.
Who would have remanded the judge? I mean, the
judge had the right.
What I'm saying is, I mean, is it the police that would now say?
Well, the order will be there.
Okay, interesting. I mean, interesting. But since it's also.
But that judge showed maturity.
How grievous is this? How grievous an injury would you say this is to the courts of our land?
I can't measure it, but I don't think we've had it like this in the history of the judiciary in Nigeria. It's about, that's why I was saying, it happened while the court was still sitting, and the court also intervened. Other species of impunity had happened, no problem. But this one, the court called the officer and said, look here, I have made an order. And the officer said, yes, your order should be where it is. And that's why politicians can say go to court, because the order of court will not count.
Well, Professor Ananaba, we have to thank you very much for, helping us understand just how sobering a moment this should be for us all.
Yeah.
Because it really speaks to, we're talking about an entire arm of government. If this is our democracy, and we say that we're doing a democracy operated on the basis of 3 arms of government, it does tell us what a sobering moment this should be for all of us. And we hope to see, many more responses in the coming days, as you said, from perhaps starting from perhaps the NBA and a number of other bodies.
Yeah, let me say this, that it's not even up to what the Supreme Court considered in Governor of Lagos State and Ojukwu when it described it as executive lawlessness. This is worse than that.
Well, Professor Ananaba, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. We'll take a break at this moment. We'll be back shortly to discuss another matter. This time around, it's a different type of lawlessness, but it's happening in Enugu State. To see how it is that the governor of that state is trying to bring things under control. Is he succeeding? Is there just one, government in Enugu State, and perhaps indeed the whole of the South? Is what exactly is happening there? Details in a moment. Please stay with us.
This is not a carnival, but a gentle protest by some residents of Enugu State over the weekly sit-at-home order issued by the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB. With this big banner and other small ones, residents marched through the major streets in the state's capital, demanding that people go about their day-to-day businesses in defiance of IPOB's order.
Enugu is free for your businesses. We need developers in Enugu. Without free movement in Enugu, there cannot be developers coming into Enugu. We need investors. This is more like a civil servant state. Not that we don't have amenities that we can explore to bring international investors into Enugu. We have those things in place. But how many international investors can enter this state and do business when there is about 50-something days in a year being sit at home doing nothing?
We are tired of sitting at home. Fuel price has increased. School fees has increased. House rent has increased. People can no longer manage life as usual.
We are saying no to it today. We are saying that we, the people that withstood Biafra brutal war for 30 months, we cannot cower. We cannot hide under our beds because somebody in Finland is telling us to stay indoors. We are here to say no to him.
In another part of Enugu metropolis, Secretary to the state government, Mr. Chidiebere Onya, leads a team of government officials to some major markets to seal businesses that failed to open as a result of the sit-at-home order.
What I came today was to enforce what His Excellency has said, that the shops that are not open, that we will seal them as a deterrent. And if you look inside that market, you see that a lot of people came, but there are few people that decided not to come. So we had an agreement here in line with the policy and His Excellency's declaration that those shops will be closed. That's why the Enugu Capital Territory Authority is here, and we have started that process. Next Monday, we will be back again. Enugu Capital Territory will now communicate the process of hearing and considering if those shops will be reopened. So this is in line with what we agreed at the town hall meeting, that in the Enugu, we are tired of sitting at home.
Given the impact of the damage the sit-at-home order has inflicted on the state's economy, the government says it will no longer tolerate this, and with the cooperation the people have shown so far, authorities believe that normalcy will soon return to the state.
Well, as you can see there, Professor Chidiebere Onya joins us this morning to discuss that all-important issue. He is the Secretary to the State Government of Enugu. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Prof.
Good morning.
Well, first of all, let's begin by asking, there are those who would wonder, first of all, well, this is perhaps a good thing, following the fact that, people in Enugu State are themselves now saying enough and no more. The natural question would be, first of all, how has it been? What are the things that you observed first before you got into office and now that you are in office? What are the feelings that you got that informed the decision of the Enugu State government to say no more sit at home on Mondays?
It's good morning to our viewers. So before we got into office, most of us also have seen how the sit-at-home has impacted the economy of the Southeast, not just Enugu State, but Enugu State specifically. We had a study during the transition period by the teams that were involved in looking at our economic growth trajectory, some of the risks that we may encounter in attracting foreign investors, in attracting our diasporan investors, not those that live in Enugu, but those that live outside Enugu that are willing to invest in our economy, and how we're able to move His Excellency's vision of moving Enugu State from a $4.4 billion GDP to a $30 billion GDP. So what we have set out to do was to step back and ask, are people really interested in this sit at home, or is it something that has been imposed on them because of the fear factor? Across the schools in Enugu, students are now attending school 4 days a week, which we know, considering what it takes to be able to achieve the full curriculum outlay for students. For instance, if it's a 180 calendar day, we're losing 4 days every single month, and times it by 10 months of academic instruction. And if we're going to be competitive in the education space, we must make sure that our students are exposed, both in the public school and in the private school, to the full impact of the learning experience to achieve a level of mastery. So we looked at it across the board, even in the mental well-being of our people, now where we know as an entrepreneurial people that sitting at home on the first working day of the month, of the week, is an anomaly. This is not something that we are known for, or anybody's known for that matter. We also looked at how can investors come into Enugu if the work days have been reduced to 4 days a week, while their operational cost and the other costs that are affiliated to it will still run. How can they be competitive? Why would an investor come to Enugu State as against other states that are investor friendly? We also looked at what this has done to our ease of doing business, where we have moved to from a number that was quite impressive earlier to now the second to the last. If you check our numbers in 2018, we were the third, according to the payback data source, and then as at 2022, we're the second to the last state. So when we
on that, just a quick one, my apologies, just a quick one on that. I mean, this fact isn't unknown to the previous administration as well, but this sit-at-home has lasted 2 years. At least 2 years before now. So one wonders whether or not these issues that you've raised, the economy of the state, the entrepreneurial mindset of the people was lost on the people themselves, because it was they themselves that decided, look, no more. And then they began to protest and say, they're not doing this anymore. They're not staying at home anymore. And then, government naturally, follows. So one wonders, why did it take this long?
Yeah, so there are different leadership models, different leadership styles. Dr. Peter Mbah's style coming from the private sector, and those of us that are here to support him achieve his vision for Enugu, we come from a different mindset, a different mental model. So he came out and said, this cannot work. I mean, we don't know what was the reason behind the last administration's decision to take a different path. But for us, we decided that this path is not sustainable. This path is just not going to work, and that it can help us achieve the economic growth, or even help us build the type of Enugu state that people that have known Enugu remember as a regional capital, somewhere that stood from and spoke from a place of pride for the region itself and even for the country. So the governor made this decision because of what he knows and the vision he has for Enugu, and he's taking it on head on. So you can notice that the citizens are beginning to feel that confidence in this administration, leading to the demonstration against the sit-at-home policy that you had mentioned earlier, and also the compliance across the board. And also to keep in mind that this process is taking a very long time. From the time that His Excellency made this declaration canceling the illegal sit-at-home, what we did was started engagement at all levels. We still first had a town hall meeting where all the critical stakeholders, everybody.
Yes, Professor Aya, we'll talk about the sit-at-home order. Now that you've mentioned the governor's decision, let's take a critical look at it. I'm wondering about the legality of the sealing of offices that refuse to open, you know, following the ban on the sit-at-home order. Well, for me, I could choose not to open my shop at any time, regardless of the sit-at-home order. But besides that, you know, I've seen, and Nigerians have seen some of those videos where the IPOB men did a very merciless flogging of people who came out on that day. And little wonder that some would rather, you know, based on experience, refuse to come out. And in those videos where you, you know, supervise the sealing of the offices, I was struggling to see the presence of security operatives that will provide some form of reassurance for the people who came out in the first place. But there is none, even in other videos that we have seen. Perhaps you'd like to speak to this.
I think your last statement is incorrect. And I say it's incorrect because the video clips you have are the ones showing me and a few of the market leaders, the market leadership team, and a couple of other people from the Enugu Capital Territory Authority. What we have also adopted as a model is to approach security process intervention from 2 points of view, having the uniformed security people present and also having quite a bit of investment into intelligence to prevent. So His Excellency's approach with the Security Council is more preventive or preemptive, so to speak. So though you don't see a lot of uniformed policemen and other security agencies around, we have also invested significantly in intelligence. And you will agree that what they have now adopted is using the social media as a ploy to cause fear and mayhem in circulating old, unverified clips, and then using this whole fear factor that they've been able to generate in the past 22 months to spread this amongst people and causing the, but there's no fact and there's no evidence that shows that any of that is true. And then going to the point, you do understand that policies are predicated, the implementation is also predicated on the context of the situation. I do agree that if there were, for instance, a situation whereby we were not going through this whole process of non-state actors trying to determine what happens in a state where there's a legitimate government and government that is very focused and clear on what it wants to do for its people, it would be okay for people to say on Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm taking a break because I'm resting, but to impose it ab initio and also have the fear factor drive it in itself undermines a bit of the credibility on the argument of I choose to sit at home only on Mondays, every single Monday, and thereby communicating some level of support for what we know is illegal. As one. Second, we have gone ahead to present very strong security presence and a strategy, not just the present, but a strategy also on our side to continue to work with this level of criminality and undermine their plans wherever they are. And what you will notice is that in a situation like this, what they're doing is trying to look for soft targets where they could go to remote areas and create a level of mayhem there, video it, and circulate amongst people. And because the fear has been around for quite a bit, people unconsciously or unintentionally circulate this. So this is what we are dealing with. So it's not that, you know, we're very big on economic growth. We're big in investment. But what you will agree with me that if Channels News was in Enugu State and channels had to be shut down every Monday, not because you guys didn't want to come to work, but because you were scared that somebody was going to cause you harm, it would be good for your business. And we understand this, and we've gone ahead to provide the security in very strategic position to address this.
Professor, I'm sure you'll agree with me that soft targets are just as important as, you know, the mass of people in the main metropolis and the business center in Enugu State. So we hope that the security presence is as widespread and the intelligence is as effective. But let's go to the engagements that the governor has begun to have with community leaders. Is it also going to reach non-state actors themselves, or perhaps youths in Enugu, to find out why, you know, they still have this loyalties to the IPOB cause and to deter, the radicalism, for want of another expression, why they are easily recruited into this movement, so to speak, of those who are still loyal to that cause?
Yes, thank you so much. So let's start by separating the arguments. These are two different things. The loyalty to freeing Nnamdi Kanu is quite different from the criminality and mayhem and destruction of our economy. So what they have done was very, very creatively tied these two together. These two are not the same thing. Killing people and asking them to sit at home against their will is not the same as advocating for the legal release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. What we have tried to do is separate the conversation so that if we're dealing with the freedom of Nnamdi Kanu, it's a different thing. And Dr. Peter Mbah has been one of those since he got into office to have visited the president and pushed this narrative very clear and continue to support it. But on the other hand, we have non-state actors that have decided to be able to use a level of ignorance in some spaces to propagate a message tying these two together. These two are not together. So for us to be able to do this, we have started meeting and continue to meet with all the local government actors, the youth leaders, the town planning, the town leaders. We've also meeting other critical players that are not necessarily recognized, like the Keke people, Nigerian Union of Road Transport, people that hear things and get involved. We've met all the stakeholders at all levels, and we are now making this clear, and they understand, and that's why you're seeing people coming up and saying that, yes, we support the freedom of Nnamdi Kanu. We support the law of the land that if a court gives a judgment, that government ought to abide by it and follow their own legal pathway to appeal it. But on the other hand, we cannot have non-state actors that are not legitimately authorized to give decisions for how the people do their business. So what we're doing is we have separated that and we're engaging to the very grassroots. That's where local government chairmen are also involved, PG leaders are involved, traditional rulers are involved in this process. So it's important that we separate these two conversations, and it's the tying them down that people that think they can sit where they are and determine what we do as a region continue to think they will thrive. But that stopped. Under this government, Dr. Peter Mbah is very clear that we're not backing down. He is the governor, and he's going to push this message to the very end, and Enugu return to where it used to be.
All right, Prof, we have to thank you very much for your understanding that you've given us this morning on this issue, even though there are those who are still wondering whether or not they got clearly your condition about the legality or otherwise of sealing the shops. But we are out of time. We have to thank you for now. Professor Chidebere Onya is Secretary to the Government of Enugu State. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. We're back after now. Do stay with us.
The acting governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Folashodun Shonubi, leads senior management officials to this media briefing after chairing the first Monetary Policy Committee meeting under the administration of President Bola Tinubu. The two-day meeting is coming at a time when inflation, high debt burden, and poor crude oil output is hitting global economies, and Nigeria is not left out.
The committee reviewed developments.
The committee voted to hike the MPR by 25 basis points to 18.75% from 18.5%, a decision that is driven by the rate of rise in inflation in the country.
Inflation across several advanced economies has continued to moderate, but remains considerably above their respective long-run objectives, even as monetary policy tightening progresses. In emerging markets and developing economies, inflationary pressure remains broadly elevated, though there are signs of moderation in some countries. Global inflation is thus expected to remain elevated through 2023, despite broad measures by several central banks to ease the pressure.
Mr. Shonubi also stated that the committee considered the effect of the increase in interest rates on investors, hence the moderate hike. He also noted the equity market has remained bullish, which indicates investors' confidence in the market. He noted that the volatility around foreign exchange rates will soon normalize.
We need to encourage the markets to be more efficient and to be more effective, and that takes a bit of time. Some of the volatility you've seen over the period has been driven by that same fact that the market needs to find its level, and also the reality that there's pent-up demand which current supply may not be sufficient for. And as we ease and satisfy the pent-up demand, we begin to see a more efficient market that runs. But you also need to understand that the dynamics of pricing in the market, and we feel we should actually stop calling it the I&E, because it is now much more than the I&E. For us, it's a market where everybody and anybody, through the licensed institutions, can participate.
The Central Bank of Nigeria hopes to continue seeking for ways to control all inflationary indices, as well as reduce the sufferings faced by Nigerians. Victoria Longjohn, Channels Television News.
Thank you for staying with us, and that's where we are at this point in time. We have here in the studio Dr. Tokpe Fashua, economist, public policy scholar, and former presidential candidate in Nigeria's 2019 elections. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Okay, Dr. Fashua, so the acting CBN governor is quoted as saying that hiking the interest rate has made a lot of difference in moderating the rate of inflation, and from 18.5 to 18.75. So please help us here. Simple, basic economics. The interest rates are going up. How's that going to moderate the inflation rate?
Thank you very much, Nota. The conventional economics and orthodox economics says that's the way it should be. If you want to control inflation, increase interest rates. That's meant to slow down people going to borrow money from banks in order to establish new businesses or expand their business. You remember now, that's about shrinking the economy. And then it also means people packing more money in the banks because the rates are higher. So people are not encouraged to go and borrow and all of that. However, you know, I do have a big issue with this orthodoxy, because obviously a lot of the economics of Adam Smith up to David Ricardo and all of those guys, and then the neoclassicals and so on, seem not to be working in places like Nigeria, because the context in which they were written are different. Of course, again, there's a pushback against the what they call heterodoxy in terms of, you know, what else can we think about to help ourselves? Apparently, we've moved up, you know, this same monetary policy rate from 13% in the last maybe 1 year or a year and a half or thereabouts, you know, to 18.75 now. What have we seen? Interest rates keeps increasing. So that means that there's a disconnect between the CBN rates and inflation, and it's not working quite the way they said it will. Remember, there's also a statement that the acting central bank governor made. He said that, well, given the fact that the numbers they have had from MBS is a moderate increase in inflation from 22.41% to 22.79%, therefore, they could increase, you know, the NPR a bit by 25 basis points. So we're moving from 18.5 to 18.75. Not quite the 50 basis point leap that we've been seeing in the last few occasions. And therefore, I would say that, you know, between me and you, the increases in interest rates are not working for us. And again, there's a way you increase interest rates that are going to precipitate a recession.
in an economy because you're shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And we're at a very, very momentous period of time that we need to be thinking exactly what are we trying to achieve. Given also the fact that the new government has promised increases
in salaries.
Not only even in GDP, you know, we promised a double digit or something close to double digit growth in the economy. First of all, devaluation actually slashes your GDP. So the devaluation we have done almost has shrunk. We may be lucky not to drop to maybe the second or third largest economy in Africa. Because the devaluation, of course, your GDP is stated in terms of dollars. And of course, so one day if you say, listen, the value of my GDP, which is in Naira, converted to the dollar, is now half. So you're taking your GDP from 500 billion or 450 billion, where it was, to about 300 billion.
Well, some
people like countries like Egypt are powering on. South Africa is also not slowing down.
Some people will say, well, it's a temporary setback, given, you know, some of the measures that have been introduced in recent times, the removal of fuel subsidy, the fact that, you know, citizens now are paying the full cost of petrol. But nevertheless, it also has an impact on the economy and the cost of living, and also what happens to inflation. Of course, maybe more importantly, the float of the Naira. Or if you like, the devaluation. I mean, you look at it as devaluation. Some people say it's the float.
So on ground,
whatever happens, the thing is, right now there is no official rate for you to buy the dollar. It has gone up, so to speak. This is currently where we are. Some people say we're in an oxymoronic situation, whereby it's an oxymoron of sorts. The value for money is depreciating, cost of living is going up. And as a result, people need more money to be able to, you know, meet up with the cost of living. And government is saying, oh, we're going to see how we can do that. Just yesterday, the government of Ogun State released its own plan to see how it is that it can assuage not the feelings now, but the conditions of living, of living in Ogun State. And they say we're going to add 10,000 naira to the salary of every worker and every pensioner, which is more money being in circulation. And then this is going to happen for 3 months while we work on, you know, providing transportation and converting all our buses to compressed natural gas, etc., etc. And we see, taken from that, you know, looking at the agreement that all of NEC has agreed, I mean, that this is going to be implemented through the states, we can expect to see more of that within the economy. It's one of the things that Labour is also agitating for. So this is currently where we are, that more money is going to be pumped into the economy. Yes, as an economist, are you going to say that, oh, government, since you're trying to mop up funds, no, that's not a very bright idea to put more money in the hands of people who are already feeling hard done by the measures that government has increased so far, has put in place so far?
Thank you very much. You remember that recently there was a step down of the 8,000 naira per month for 12 million families that the government had proposed, you know. And of course, the whole idea was, for me, thinking through that process, I was like, look, what do Nigerians need the most? The poorest of the poor. Do they need more cash to go and spend? To spend on what? If you're not increasing the production base of the economy and you're putting money in people's pockets, you're basically just driving up inflation. And inflation is said to be man's worst enemy. Even though in an economy like ours, you know, look, the problem you're going to have is if you're not growing and inflation is growing, the economy is tanking. So if you want, in an economy like ours, we may manage some level of inflation, maybe middle, 15% thereabout, but the economy must be growing much faster, 8%, 10%. Everything you have to do to make sure the economy grows. So the state governors are doing what they need to do because of they're just trying to take away the bite from that hunger and the distress that people are going through. So Ogun State has added 10,000 naira. You know, someone may say, how much is that? But okay, fine. But again, mind you, they can only do that for pensioners who have worked and earned salary over time and people who are still working. But this is a largely informal economy. I mean, all those women in the market and all of that, and people who are hustling, the laborers, the plumbers and so on, how are they going to survive? Who's going to give them the extra? So, of course, the state has to do what they have to do. And I like the fact that, of course, the states are stepping up now to say, this is not just a federal government affair. A place like Bauchi, they put some buses out. Maybe they want to take people for free. Indeed, these are some of the things that needed to have come a lot earlier. It looked as if we didn't actually think around these issues before rolling out those policies. And then you mentioned the floating of the currency. Ordinarily speaking, I want that if you are going to deregulate the market, let that sink for a while before floating the currency or devaluing the currency, because de facto what it is devaluation. Now, it used to be 461. There was an arbitrage, 461 to 770. And then we said, okay, you know what? We want to unify the rate. I said, ordinarily speaking, I would have suggested that they waited to see how people get used to this issue of 500 and... how much was it before? 547 in Abuja, 500 in Lagos and co. However, you know, we had to move with that again. Now, policy sequencing is very, very important. And you have to also look at the ability of your people who are usually in distress, who are in long-term poverty situations and so on, long-term economic downturn, to look at their ability to be able to cope with some of this. Because what that does is that, you know, we have now had to increase fuel price again. Now, so, and of course, I understand that on the streets, the Naira is now trading at around maybe 860 or thereabout, you know. And so, for how long are we going to have to do that again to increase fuel prices? At the moment we keep increasing fuel prices, that also goes into the cost of every other good. So there's a point at which you have to backstop it. These orthodox policies, we have to be very careful how we adopt them. We have to look at several other variables that pertain to our economy and our people before forging ahead.
You said
I remember also, lastly, Emefiele, that the Labor guys are asking for 200,000 minimum wage.
And federal government's actually thinking about it.
And in fact, I've also heard they're thinking about it.
Yes, indeed.
I mean, give me a break. The point is, look, how does the private sector cope with that? How many private sector entities can pay 200,000 naira to the cleaner? I mean, that's the minimum, or the gardener.
This is the bigger picture. I mean, that is, of course, going to be a part of the larger conversation. Yes. But then, you know, some people have said, oh, there are ways around it. I mean, for instance, you know, government doesn't have to give all of that money in cash. It can provide housing. It can, because you've talked about how if you're putting money directly in people's hands and there is no production to support it, what you're actually doing is just driving up inflation.
It wouldn't be a bad idea if government could provide houses. But again, we have to start thinking in terms of inequality, because are we saying that anybody that works for government is so lucky and everybody else should just find their level, anything they can do and so on? If the government is providing housing for... How many people does government employ? Actually, the public service, the civil service is less than 100,000.
Yeah, but right now, we know that...
If you extend it to the public service under the federal government, about 2.1 million people. None of the states employ 100,000 people. None, not even Lagos State.
Yeah, but...
Okay, so you have to be careful how you do that.
If we know that houses have already been built, we know that not all of the houses that government has built has been occupied.
The government hasn't actually built enough. Most of the unoccupied buildings are private sector driven. Unfortunately for us, when we had the opportunity, okay, what we're doing, when you go to Nigeria, go to places like even Kenya, Nairobi and co, even Morocco, Casablanca and co, some of the places I've been. When you come to Nigeria, what you see is that our housing policy is driven by so much selfishness. We're not thinking collective. But you know what, Mark, what's going on now and the huge arguments that are going on now is also an opportunity for us to recalibrate this economy. And I like the fact that people are speaking, people are resisting, and the hardship that has been kind of, that people are going through is good impetus for people to think and voice out, and government to also think. So now we have to think collective, all right? So, but we must quickly take the argument away from public sector. Okay. To say that, listen, remember, this is an informal economy. Most of the economies, that means that most of the economy is in the private sector. Okay. How does the private sector survive with this kind of thing?
I understand my colleagues have a question or two for you.
Yes, thank you, Mokwe. It's interesting, you know, to follow the conversation. Mr. Fashua, it's also unmistakable that the acting CBN governor noted that Nigerians should be patient, that the exchange rate will stabilize in the long term. I wonder what his optimism is hinged on if we're not doing the right things to encourage that, i.e. importation, especially when you consider that the import bill in the last quarter or the quarter before this year is still as high as 5 trillion naira.
No, well, the central bank can only take positions on monetary policy. Ordinarily speaking, I would have said that we've used most of our monetary policy bullets. In fact, the suspended central bank governor is basically accused, by people who speak about, going into heterodox policy, delving into fiscal policy and so on. Which is not actually peculiar to Nigeria anyway, because every time there's an economic issue like that, from what I've read, international economics, central banks tend to go into all of those places. But Keynes made that popular statement, in the long run, we're all dead. And I think that the government we can do a lot better in terms of managing the situation. See, there's nothing wrong in admitting your vulnerability in order to take a leadership position. Position to say that, listen, rather than just telling people, be patient, we are coming, be patient, we are coming, I think that we have got to the point now where we must actually show the people what we have in store for them. So we want collective thinking, okay, and it's good that the states have actually started stepping up. But we want to see action in the area of transportation across the board, in the area of food production and distribution across the board. I wrote an article about food distribution. They have several programs in places like India, places like Brazil, places like the US, which is even the headquarters of capitalism in the world. We can do a lot. But rather than putting cash in the pockets of people, yes, government can actually purchase food from our farmers and use that to kind of incentivize that sector Dr. Fashion, and integrate the local
because
government.
We're not talking about this particular issue of agriculture for the first time. It's been on for eons. If memory serves me right, almost 40 years we've been talking about that. But that's not where I want to go. I'll quickly speak to one of these issues that the acting governor of CBN raised when he talked about exchange rates. He said, and I quote, in response to a question by the press there, "We're not trying to unify the rate. We believe that we need to encourage the market to be efficient, and that takes a bit of time. Some of the volatility you've seen over the period have been driven by that. The market needs to find its level, and also the reality that there's pent-up demand, which current supply may not be sufficient for." How do you respond to that? Because the opinion a number of people had was that, okay, the federal government is now unifying the rates, but here is the CBN governor saying, no, that's not what we are doing. We're doing something different.
Oh my, it's just incredible. But we really, really have to be careful about the management of the economy and the management of the people. Honestly speaking, I'll say that Nigerian people have gone through so much already, okay? And for those of us who are lucky, we have to also acknowledge our luck. Most people don't even know what to do with themselves right now. And so, I mean, of course, all of those grammar was being bandied, want to unify the rate. The thing is that a rate can never be unified. I kept saying that and letting our people know that you can't, in any economy, you can't have a single rate. But a lot of guys in the financial market push that idea of unifying the rate. And of course, if you are going to move the official to go and meet the black market rate, I call it black market. People say, don't call it black. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't call it black market. It's an illegal market. If we are going to have to keep doing that, the point is that you have to look at what is driving that market, because otherwise you find yourself having to use the official, the legal market, pursuing the illegal market ad infinitum. It's a dog chasing his tail. So now the central bank governor is the acting governor is making it clear that, listen, we're not actually trying to unify. We just want to create a market rate. That's great. However, what we have also seen, and this is by way of feedback to the central bank governor in the last few days, is that a lot of people are also complaining that they cannot get many of their transactions done through the banks. And they're having to revert. I've heard Manufacturers Association and people like that saying that they're having to revert to the black market. What took us here in the first place is, where manufacturers and retailers and so on and importers will tell you that they can't access the official market, because of this margin, they have to run to the black market, and therefore they have to add more money to the prices of their goods, and that has been driving up inflation. If the central bank is going to actually make this statement, they have to assure us that they have to explain to the public that in every circumstance, if they needed money and all of that, they can always approach the official market, which the governor said, listen, we can't even begin to describe it as I and E anymore. It's not investors and exporters anymore. It's something much broader, somewhere that people can walk to. People need that assurance. But my understanding in the last few days is that there's been hiccups in approaching that market itself, and there are so many transactions that are not being met in that market, making people to revert. And that's why you can see that maybe unofficial rate or black market rate is talking about maybe 860, which some people said they've quoted up to 1,000. It's a scary situation. So we cannot continue to feed that market.
Dr. Fashaw, whether we want to feed that market or not, the market is there. The black and the white markets are both there.
Indeed.
And since the rates are almost uniform, I understand even the commercial banks are matching the rates of the black market.
I understand that commercial banks are going to the black market to to fulfill. Look,
so at the end of the day,
we have to be very transparent about what we're trying to achieve.
As we try to wind down now, what exactly do we do? You talked about increasing the productivity level in order to even manage the inflation rate, as the acting CBN governor said. So what do we do? I tried to scribble some things here. From my layman's economics knowledge, cost of production, or the things that are required for production, land, money, power, personnel, those are basic things. But Nigeria as it is, to expand the Nigerian economy, to bring in the investors we need, what should we be doing now?
Number one, okay, I can tell you like 10 things anyway. Number one, Nigerians need to take their minds off the central bank. Okay. The central bank itself should reposition itself from being the key driver of this economy. We've done that under Emefiele. It hasn't worked. Okay? So let's move away from that. Let's move away from this pushing all of this orthodoxy to say that, oh, let us go and do what is inside the textbook because the textbook says this is the way to work. What I will say is this: we also need a plan. The government of the day must bring out a master plan to say, this is where we're going. That seems not to have happened, to say, okay, this is where we're going with all of this. Painful reforms, very painful reforms, but hey, this is the light at the end of the tunnel. 1, 2, 3, 4, chess game. We make this move, that move comes, and all of that, we get somewhere. Lastly, the last thing I'll say is this. I'll say that let's understand who we are. We're still a largely agrarian economy. If our people are poor, what can we do with the agricultural sector? Though, Ayo mentioned that earlier on. What can we do in the agricultural sector to incentivize that sector, to open up our rural areas, because that is where our next spurt of growth is. To say, okay, in the US they have it, food programs. They spend billions every year buying products from their farmers to distribute to deficit areas. And that way you're going to reduce poverty and all of that.
And he said,
that can work.
He said improve security.
And the point is that we have billions of naira in post-harvest losses. Even our poultry farmers said they can't sell their eggs at some point.
Yeah,
and this is a country where we suffer malnutrition.
Mr. Pastor, we really need to go.
We take it down from all of this highfalutin financial market discussion and keep it simple and grow our economy from the scratch.
Thank you very much. Dr. Fashaw as an economist, public policy scholar, and former presidential candidate in Nigeria's 2019 elections. Thank you for coming in today. And that is the show, but just before we go, let's let you know that the Nigerian Bar Association actually did put out a statement concerning that matter at the Federal High Court in Ikoyi yesterday. And this bar condemns the despicable altercation which took place at the premises of the Federal High Court, Lagos, between operatives of the Department of State Services and officers of the Nigeria Correctional Service. Says, while it is difficult not to hold the leadership of the two federal government agencies directly responsible for the shameful and disgraceful conduct of its personnel, one cannot discount the possible overzealousness or excesses of the officers involved as being responsible for what we witnessed.
Well, they also talked about the NBA further condemning the brazen disrespect for the sanctity of the court premises. The courts and the judicial processes remain the barometer by which the conduct of persons or agencies of government are gauged in assessing the rule of law. The NBA calls on the two agencies to take immediate disciplinary measures against the officers involved in this disgraceful conduct.
And with that, we say thank you for letting us be a part of your morning. I'm Neo Taigbe.
I'm Maupe Ogunye, so thank you.
I am Bukola Koka. Bye for now.
I'm looking forward to the last part of that conversation. Let's see whether or not there will be those disciplinary actions from those two agencies. I'm Aya Makinde. Enjoy the rest of your day.